people where they actually identify as animals. She started talking to me about how in her past life she was an animal.
I'm sorry, but I shouldn't be laughing because in another sense this isn't funny. Like, it's very serious. These are mental health issues that young people are experiencing, but they literally call themselves Therian. They identify as a fucking animal. That is hilarious. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, this mom explains that her daughter now identifies as an animal. Yes, seriously. Let's take a look.
Sat down and she opened up to me about what was going on. She said that, Mom, I wanted to let you know that I am a Therian. And of course, I was just like,
Oh?
okay, what the f is that? Like, what is a Therian? Because you can tell me a lot of things and I'm gonna be, okay, all right. But that literally had me scratching my head because I've never heard that before. So backtrack before this conversation, she was always asking to go to Hobby Lobby and Michael so that she could pick up masks. And I noticed that she was, drawing masks and wearing animal masks, and I thought that was really great. I'm like, okay, she's, very artistic and she's getting into, some new hobbies and being real crafty, and I love that. However, I did not know that she was slowly becoming a part of this group or this community of people where they actually identify as animals. She started talking to me about how in her past life she was an animal, and that it was now her mission in this life to reconnect and remember what type of animal or Therian spirit she was. I can't make this up because, you would expect your child to come out as trans, gay, whatever, but the last thing you would expect your child to come out as is as an animal, okay? It got to the point where she wanted to wear the mask out in public, like at the grocery store, at the mall. We went to Disney. She snuck her mask in a bag and tried to wear them to Disney. So I started researching what this was about. And I'm the type of parent, I'm definitely not going to stifle your ability to express yourself and identify yourself as you see fit. I want you to be happy, even if that means you are howling at the fucking moon. If that makes you happy, I'm okay with that. But what I am concerned about is a young mind being susceptible to cult and cult-like groups.
So, this is where we are. In the year of our Lord, 2024, kids are identifying as animals and wanting to wear animal masks and believing that in her past life, she was an animal. Babe, the delulu is off the charts. It is great to be open and accepting to your child, but like anything, there has to be a limit. And when you're so open-minded, your brain can fall out. It is not a parent's job to just affirm anything a kid says. And this mom does express some skepticism in this full video about but is she being misled by online groups or what's going on here? I'm not quite sure. But unfortunately then does seem to go along with it because she has other videos showing her shopping for animal masks with her and just going along with this. And I think that's a mistake. Okay, you are not an animal. You cannot identify as an animal. Well, I guess you can, but you're still not. And it is important to help children understand the difference between delusion and reality, fact and fantasy. The correct response to your child telling you they identify as an animal is to take them to therapy, take away TikTok, take away the cell phone and the social media for a while, and don't bully them, don't shame them. It's okay if they want to dress up as an animal and play pretend sometimes, but don't go along and start affirming that they actually are an animal, that they have a spirit animal, that they were an animal in a past life, any of that nonsense, because it's not real. It's not valid. It's not legitimate. Of course, you should never reject your child or disown them or abuse them just because they identify a certain way or anything like that. But that doesn't mean you have to go complete to the opposite extreme and just accept and embrace anything they tell you. And that's, I think, the shortcoming with the liberal perspective on these issues is well, I just want my child to be happy, so anything goes. There does have to be a limit to that at some point. If your 10-year-old starts identifying as a freaking cat, the answer is not to give them catnip, okay? The truth is that stuff like this is a warning to parents. You've got to be aware of what your kids are looking at online because there is a lot of this nonsense gobbledygook and there is a lot of this stuff being spread as a fad, and there's a sense of community and there's Reddit threads and there's TikTok communities and there's all sorts of things they can get sucked into where they're told all of this nonsense, and they're told that anyone who doesn't affirm them is traumatizing them or bullying them or abusing them or whatever. And it can be really toxic and dangerous. And it can lead impressionable young people with mushy brains down ridiculous paths where they start actually believing they're an animal on the inside or something else absurd. This TikToker actually had a message for parents out there that I thought was a good one.
There's a lot of things out there online for these babies to get into. And if you are not actively monitoring it, your baby could be in a whole cult and you wouldn't even know it. I noticed the mask, and I noticed the increased interest in wearing, different animal masks, but it wasn't until I snooped around online. It wasn't until I snooped around online that I noticed that this was a lot bigger than, oh, I just want to pretend to be an animal. No, this is some pretty deep stuff, you guys. So I don't know if there are any other moms that have experienced this, but if you have, drop your comment below, or if you haven't heard of it, I mean, just be aware that this is what therians means. That's what it is, and that is really growing in this tween Gen Z, Gen Alpha generation.
I'm sorry, but I shouldn't be laughing because in another sense, this isn't funny. Like, it's very serious. These are mental health issues that young people are experiencing. But another thing, they literally call themselves therian. They identify as a fucking animal. That is hilarious. But this mom does need to take her own advice. She does need to be more skeptical of what her kids are up to online. And you do not need to just blanket affirm anything your child says about their identity or their sense of self. I think that's one of the most toxic ideas in modern new wave thinking and parenting that I've seen. You should not, obviously, I think if you go too far to the other extreme, if you try to crack down on this and force your child to stop this nonsense, it may have the opposite effect, because sometimes kids that dig their heels in, but you also don't need to affirm it and embrace it and just double down on it either. You can tell your child, no, you are not an animal. No, I'm not going to refer to you with pup self pronouns. You are a young lady. Come on, get a grip. But you should not obviously be doing anything horrible to your child just because they're being silly about this kind of thing. And you can't go too far and try to force it out of them, or many teenagers or preteens will just double down on it as a form of rebellion. But we can't go down this path of just affirming anybody's sense of self all the time. It leads to a ridiculous place eventually. So there does have to be some limit and some degree of common sense that comes in here sometime. Whew, this kind of thing makes me frightened to become a parent one day. It really does. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button to reward my suffering through this insane app.